The Green MSP, Gillian Mackay, has been working on a bill that would introduce a 200-metre buffer zone around such facilities. She says it would protect women often facing traumatic circumstances from harassment. But Grace Brown from the Society for Protection of Unborn Children argues it would be a regressive move. Both joined us in the studio to discuss. Grace, so this 40-day vigil or protest, whatever you want to call it, started outside the Queen Elizabeth Hospital today. What are they hoping to achieve?
Well, a pro-life vigil is not a protest. A pro-life vigil is a peaceful, community-based gathering which simply seeks to offer women who may be coerced or pressured into an abortion alternative information and support. We know that coerced abortion is a very real problem in the UK. Very often when you speak to a woman who has had an abortion, she describes how it's not about choice. It was actually a lack of choice and a lack of support which has pushed her towards that decision. So that is the purpose of a pro-life vigil, to help ease some of those pressures and help her with alternative choices and support which would allow her to continue her pregnancy.
Gillian, they're trying to tell these women going in that there are alternative choices.
That presumes that those alternative choices are not already given by the staff who are qualified to do so within the services that these women are already accessing. We know from the testimony that we've heard that these protests are intimidating and harassing and are causing fear and alarm for those who are attending various types of medical services at the moment around the country. Intimidating and harassing?
Harassment and intimidation does not take place at pro-life vigils. A 2018 Home Office study found that pro-life vigils were passive in nature.
But if that's the effect it's having on women?
Well, I think we need to have a measured response towards that. There's many women whose children are alive today because they sought support from a pro-life vigil, and to those women, pro-life vigils are important parts of society.
OK. Let's talk about the legislation that you're hoping to introduce. Why do you think it's necessary? And just tell us a bit about what it's going to mean.
So my bill will introduce 200-metre safe access zones around clinical settings that provide abortion services. That means that for those who are currently having to pass these protests and having that level of fear and harassment that many people are telling us that they experience, those won't happen anymore as close to the services as they are at the moment. It's got the majority of parties, it's got all parties across Parliament and the majority of MSPs backing it, as well as most party leaders as well. And I'm really grateful for all of that support and all of the testimony we've heard from many people coming forward with their stories of what they've faced outside of their healthcare appointments.
So the vigils like the ones that are happening, the one that's happening at the moment, they won't be able to take place anymore. I mean, what are your feelings about this legislation?
I think it's a very disproportionate response to the reality of pro-life vigils in Scotland. And
disproportionate in what way?
Well, there's some serious red flags to do with this bill. The bill's not making clear what would actually constitute a breach of a buffer zone. I think right now the bill is stating that influencing someone's decision would be a breach, but it fails to actually define what influencing would actually mean. And as well, we're setting a limit of 200 metres around healthcare facilities, but within the bill, legislators are reserving the right to increase that boundary as they see fit. So right now we're dealing with a bill which, if passed, Scots are going to have no way of knowing if they've fallen foul of the law or not.
Well, what's your response to that?
I think at the moment those protests outside healthcare settings are seeking to dissuade or change people's mind about or influence them as to what their decision is about their healthcare. So the current vigils, protests, whatever it is.
Grace is saying that people aren't going to know where they stand or whether they're, acting within the law.
If they're seeking to, they will know themselves if they're seeking to influence someone's decision about whether they access healthcare or not. And the safe access zones themselves mean that people can protest anywhere else, just not in that 200 metres. If they want to influence abortion legislation, come outside Parliament and come and speak to the politicians who can actually change things rather than approaching people outside healthcare facilities.
Why can't you just move the vigils outside the Scottish Parliament, as Gillian's suggesting?
Because this is not about protesting, this is about offering women support, and therefore pro-life vigils need to be where support is needed the most.
But are you suggesting these women have not been offered this support at all? They must know of the other options.
Well, when you listen to the voices of women, I think we would very much like to believe that our team at the NHS are offering women all of the support, resources sources information which they're entitled to. But very often when you listen to a woman's story who's had an abortion, it's very much a common and shared experience that they feel they're being pushed down a path to abortion. Alternative support and information is simply not being given to them.
So we're fine listening to some women, but not others. So we're fine listening to the women who you believe are evidence of coercion. But the massive number of women who tell us that the behaviour is intimidatory, we've not to listen to or do anything about. It's a bit of a severe double standard for me.
Well, not at all. As I said at the start, I think that it's really important that this is measured and that this is balanced, and at the same time I think it's important that women who have received support from pro-life vigils are not shut out of the conversation simply because they no longer fit a pro-abortion narrative.
Will this compromise free speech?
Absolutely not. As I said, everywhere else in the country, people will be able to have their protests and have their views known, just not within 200 metres of healthcare settings, which I hope everybody feels appropriate, is that people should be able to go and express their right for their healthcare without fearing what it is they're going to face, without the judgment. And some people actually also feel that their privacy is compromised with being observed going into healthcare facilities as well. So there's a real onus on us as legislators to make sure that people can go and access their healthcare free from those feelings.
Similar legislation is being introduced in Northern Ireland and other parts of the world. Do you not think this indicates that this is the direction of travel that society is going in terms of pro-life vigils protests?
No, I think that this is a concerted effort to stamp out a pro-life voice and presence from society. I think that pro-life people have a right to gather peacefully, and women have a right to access the information which they're offering.